shoulder. And again, this is like, let's say somebody who's kneeling down on the ground and she's prone on the ground. And then the other ones also could have been done. Number 8 and number 10, seem to be in the same general direction. If she was rolled up on her right shoulder and he was stabbing down, it would get that directionality. I think the one where labeled number 9, it could be her turning or it could be him moving. Obviously, there's a lot of spine and rib there, bones that they could hit. So I'm not exactly sure why the angle, the sharp edge is downward, but it seems to me that there's a high likelihood that that person did 8, 9, and 10 all around the same time and 7 and 11 at different times.
I completely agree with that. That's exactly what I had in my notes.
The anomalies are the 2 on her buttocks and thigh, which I think we've already explained. And then on the head, there's a short stab wound, half-inch deep, and it's totally consistent with the stab wound 7 and 11. And I think that it could have been done at the same time as 7 and 11. The cut, it's hard to say because there's no information about it. It could be that she was hit on the head at some point. It could be that her head hit the ground at some point. It could be that her head hit something sharp at some point. I have no idea. There's just not enough information, and I'm just surprised there are no photographs of it.
Yeah, there don't seem to be any, at least not admitted in trial, any close-up photographs of any of the wounds.
No, it just boggles my mind. I'm sorry, but it boggles my mind why they wouldn't do that. Be that as it may, we have what we have. But the cut, number 2, if I'm not mistaken, it's only sharp edge. So I believe that was a slash. That was a slash. And I think that if you look at stab wound 1, if the victim turned her head towards her right after that, or even if that particular stab pushed her head, so that her nose turned to her right, I think that next, if he stabbed in the same place, it could have cut right along her cheek like that.
Right. Meaning that he missed his stab and ended up slicing her cheek instead?
Yeah. To me, I don't see how you would get that upward motion if that stab wound was from while she was facing the offender. I mean, her chin would have had to been lifted up really high in order for that to happen. But from the back, from a taller person or from a person who's oriented above her, that would be doable. So do you have any questions for me before I get into some of my thoughts here?
Okay, this seems like a great time to take a quick break to hear about our sponsor, and then we'll get right back into Jim's analysis. Today's episode is sponsored in part by Blue Apron. Blue Apron is the #1 fresh ingredient recipe delivery service in the country, and their mission is to make incredible home cooking accessible to everyone. So for a few months now, Mike has been using Blue Apron every week. So I'm going to let you explain how Blue Apron works.
Well, it's real easy. Every Friday when I get off work, I go home and there's a box sitting in front of my door. Take the box in, I open the box up, and inside I've got 3 meals with ingredients pre-portioned for me. And all the meals come with recipe cards that have step-by-step instructions on how to cook them. It's been awesome. I've gone from not knowing how to cook at all to cooking incredible home-cooked meals all by myself. Last night I made pork and cabbage tacos with pineapple and pickled jalapeno salsa.
Think about how much you spend when you go out to eat or go to those overpriced grocery stores. With Blue Apron, you're spending less than $10 per meal. All the recipes are unique and delicious. You can customize your order, your delivery date, and what's on the menu every week. There's no food waste, you don't have to measure, everything's pre-portioned, and all you have to do is follow easy step-by-step instructions. Whether you're a cook that just doesn't have the time to go figure out all the ingredients you need for your meals, or you're someone like Mike who's just learning how to cook, you need to check out Blue Apron. And like I said before, all of their meals are incredibly unique. Coming up this month, they have salmon piccata with orzo and broccoli, pork chops and miso butter with bok choy and marinated apple, vegetable chili and baked sweet potatoes with crispy tortilla strips, or spicy shrimp coconut curry with cabbage and rice. So check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals for free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/truth. You will love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron. So don't wait. That's blueapron.com/truth. Blue Apron, a better way to cook. Okay, we're back from our break. And Jim, did you have any more questions for me before we go on with your analysis?
I don't think so at this time. I mean, obviously there are still a bunch of unanswered questions, and I'd love to hear what you find out when you get more deeply into this investigation. But I will say that obviously my analysis at this point is limited by the lack of information that we have. But there are some indicators here that are important and that I think tell us something about this offender or offenders. So that we'll go into it, and you can ask me questions and tell me what you think, and we'll see where we go.
All right, that sounds good. Let's get started.
All right. Well, I think the first indicator that I would say that really tells me something is the fact that this offender or offenders were unable to completely control this victim. And so I do not believe that there was a traditional blitz attack. In other words, blitz attacks are overwhelming application of force that completely incapacitates the victim. I think this is more likely a surprise attack that didn't go as planned by the offenders, and that it is something that they had to sort of make up as they went along. They were not experienced. They were not very effective at this crime, and that it probably meant that the post-offense behavior was probably a good deal of panic because it did not go according to plan. That plan was probably somewhat done in advance. In other words, I don't think there's a lot of indicators here that this person was extremely criminally sophisticated or forensically sophisticated, because they didn't accomplish their goal right away. And I think that when you see this kind of behavior, then it can be an indicator of immaturity, or it can be an indicator of mental illness. In other words, this was a risk. This was a high-risk crime for a couple of reasons. One is that it was done out in the open during daylight hours. And even though it was early morning, it's by a school, and there's a lot of probability that there are people there getting ready for school and so forth. So it is a high-risk crime. On the other hand, the fact that she was worried enough, and I believe that the indicators point to the fact that she took that knife for protection. I think the fact that she was worried enough to do that means that there was probably more than just one incident where she felt she was being followed. And despite that, she is a determined woman. She is very set in her ways. And what that did, unfortunately, was raise her risk. I believe the person or persons that did this knew this was her routine, saw her over and over again, and as a result, chose this particular time to act. That could have been because of an extreme stressor in their life or a sort of buildup of desire. But there are no indicators that this was done because of sexual desire. So let's talk about what other desires there might be. Does this look like the work of a serial killer who just wants to find whatever opportunity, kind of lays out a trap or throws out a web, and whoever gets caught in that web, he kills? I just don't see that indicated here, because it doesn't look like this person has any experience at all in killing someone. Although I would say that the goal of this attack seems to be totally for the purposes of killing her. So that could mean revenge. That could mean somebody put them up to it. Could mean somebody hit on somebody. It could also mean that there are there's some indicators that it could be multiple offenders. So it could be something that they had an idea and they were going to attack or rob, but when it went so wrong, they just took off. There's also a possibility that there is some kind of, I don't know, gang-related violence here. What was the situation in terms of gangs in that neighborhood?
The best information that I have was from a few people that lived in the neighborhood at the time when this murder occurred. And the best information that I got was that around that time that, quote, the gangs were starting to move into the area. Apparently it got much worse after that. But I don't have any, hard statistics or anything like that. I've just been told that, as a matter of fact, the person that found the body, they broke their lease and moved out of the house they were renting shortly after this because there was another couple of incidents with thefts and robberies and things. And they just said the gangs were moving in, and so they got out.
Well, I mean, let's say this. If I were a gang member and I wanted to scare people out of the neighborhood and I decided to kill somebody to do that, it seems like they might have dragged her into the middle of the street and left her there or something, put some gang sign on her body or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But that seems to have been done. So although it's a possibility, I'm not really leaning towards that. But I do think that it was an inept or more than one inept killer, because I think that they may have had other motives, but didn't quite get there because of the fact that they didn't know what they were doing.
Now, on the topic of motive, you said a few minutes ago that you thought that the goal of the attack was murder. So when you're looking at this, do you think that they attacked her with the intention of killing her, or do you think it's possible that there was another motive, and when she pulled the knife out and things broke bad, that it just ended in murder?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The only goal that's obvious is murder because there was no other indication. The thing that concerns me is that there are indicators that she was being watched, followed, stalked, or all of the above. And having a regular routine means that somebody could have been watching her for some time, seeing her go by, maybe building up a desire, but being totally inept at being able to carry it out. In other words, yeah, they could have intended to threaten and rape her, for example. But she pulls a knife. They're like, they don't know what to do. She gets away. They get her again. There's all sorts of confusion, and she just won't die because they're stabbing her all over the place multiple times from multiple angles. This did not go at all like they planned. So I do think that it could be that somebody had built up a desire for her and acted on that. But it could also be, this is so confused, this is so inept, that it could also be somebody who just wanted to take control of her, didn't get that response from her, and completely lost it and killed her.
If we go back to that first scenario where, maybe it's a stalker that might have built up a desire, and maybe the intention is to abduct and sexually assault. When they didn't plan it very well, she had the knife, things break bad. If we're looking at that hypothetical scenario, does the fact that they killed her rather than just fleeing, does that tell us anything about the offender?
It could really indicate the fact that they thought that they would be identified. In other words, I would think that would be an offender that was either known to her or known to the area, because you don't want to leave a witness. If I'm a complete stranger and I just pull up because I see her walking around alone and I pull a knife on her and she pulls a knife on me, I'm like, oh, hey, whoa, okay, I'm out of here. Why go to the whole extent of murdering her? It seems kind of extreme. This person was goal directed. I mean, they followed through. Why? What was the purpose of killing her then? Like I said, it doesn't show an indicator that, for example, if it's a young guy, inexperienced at killing, curious, usually you'll see piquerism, where they kind of probe with the end of the knife, see what it's like, sticking it in somebody. And we don't see that, but you see some really violent, deep cut and attempts to do more damage, but ineffective, hitting the sternum, for example, hitting the skull. Somebody who didn't know that if you stab somebody in the head, it's not going to go through the skull without some serious force behind it. So again, I'm saying this is either a young, inexperienced person or somebody who had some mental disorder that caused this kind of behavior. Because this is